Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 412 and my guest is Heather Blumberg. Heather is an interior designer and renovator. She and her family moved into an abandoned 150-year-old Gothic-style funeral home in Dresden, Ontario, and its renovation is the subject of their Discovery Plus show, We Bought a Funeral Home. It showcases the incredible life that has been breathed into the house, but also it stirred up a bevy of ghostly roommates in the process. Not the show, but just their being there and the renovation. The hauntings are the subject of a new book by Richard A. Stepp called A Grave Undertaking, which comes out August 2024. Heather is delightful. I was following Heather. She has a TikTok, the Blumbergs, and she's been documenting a lot of the home renovations and her design style and everything, which is impeccable, so beautiful, and her family and all that. And it was on this TikTok and Instagram. And then one day, my friend Nick posted about being at the house, and it turned out they're related. So wild, her husband and Nick. And so Nick, my friend, was on episode 386, if you want to check that out. Nick Buda, he's an incredible drummer, plays with Kenny Chesney, also a great episode. I'm so excited. Can you tell how fast I'm talking? I'm so excited about this episode with Heather. Such an interesting woman, super open. We talked about many of the happenings going on in the house. The book, of course, will go into much further detail. That's the one that's coming out in August. Of all the people and all the families that could have moved into this home, they're the perfect family. I'm so glad that it's them. And listen carefully at 15:30 and at 25:14. Noises that are neither the dog nor a door. I'm telling you what, I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. It's wild. And yeah, right up my alley. I want to go stay in this house immediately. That's a tale for another day. All right, general stuff. I'm on Patreon at Susan Ruthism, and check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors. Follow Susan Ruthism, Hey Human Podcast, or now, of course, watch the first film now that I have my movie done. On social media there, find my albums on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your music. All I Ever Wanted Was Everything was my last record. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, find Patreon at patreon.com/Susan Ruthism. It helps keep Hey Human ad-free and cover the exorbitant amount of money it costs to run a podcast by myself. And yeah, thanks for listening. Be well, be kind, be love, be open, because this is a wild ride. Here we go. Heather Blumberg, welcome to Hey Human.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on the show for lots of reasons. But we have to give a shout out to Nick, who connected us.
I know, Nick is just the best human. He's amazing.
He's a good guy. He had a great episode on the show too. He's lovely. I've known him for a long time.
Yeah, he's giving me a tough act to follow, I'm not going to lie.
You'll be fine. It'll be good. How I wanted to jump in with you, just to give people a little bit of background on you, where you were raised, and what led you on the trajectory of who you are and what you do, which then sets the stage for what we're going to talk about.
Sure, absolutely. So my background is totally bizarre. There are no street paths involved. Obviously British, grew up in Cambridge, met a South African and got married at sort of a tender age of about 23, subsequently had 2 children. And in that time, we were working in a very corporate world for one of the big 4s consulting firms, and they posted us all over the world. So it was great. We got to experience actually pretty much every continent we got to live and work on. And eventually that led us to Canada, which is where we reside now. We've been here 13 years. And this is where it all sounds perfectly normal to begin with. This is where it starts to get weird. At this point, I'm a partner from a consulting firm, so little miss super corporate, and the pandemic hits. And a month before the pandemic hits, I decide now's a really great time to quit my job and find myself something in the arts, because corporate is not for me. It took me a long time to figure that out. And so during the pandemic, during the lockdown, my husband and I saw a picture of a house online with an article saying, cash out of your city home and go live in a mansion in the country. And it was at that point, which we'll probably get into more, that we ended up in a very small town in Canada called Dresden, living in a 150-year-old funeral home. It looks like the Addams family mansion. And we had a random approach by a production company who said, hey, we think you'd make a good TV show. Fancy it? And that's how I've ended up here today.
They approached you just because you bought this 150-year-old home, or because while you were living in this home, you started to hear things that go bump in the night?
So the former, the house that we saw was in a news article. That's how we saw it. And once we bought it, we drove out not having any intention of moving out of Toronto, walked in the back door, we're here 3 minutes, and we were like, crap, we're buying this house, aren't we? And it happened that quickly. And literally on the way home, drive home, we told the kids, by the way, we're moving to small town, ancient old funeral home, and we're going to bring it back to life. The news article did a follow-up saying, we heard one of the houses features sold. They named me, and the production company tracked me down through LinkedIn and said, do you want to do a TV show? Can we talk to you? And so we were like, this is so bizarre. This doesn't happen in real life. Of course we're going to take this call. And we initially thought from the conversation that it was going to be like an episode of someone else's show, and it turned into our own show. And at that point, our view was, we're buying a funeral home. Everyone arrives dead. It's going to be so peaceful. It's going to be so lovely. And we learned very quickly that that's not the case.
Is it still an active funeral home then at this point when you purchased it?
No, it had closed as a funeral home in, I think, 2015. And it sat on the market for 6 years. So we bought it in 2021. So it'd been decommissioned. And it was originally built by a lumber baron, and it was built as a family home mansion. And about 60 years after it was built, it was turned into a funeral home. So it operated as a funeral home for 100 years.
Did the TV show want to know the reno aspect and the design aspect, and that's why they approached you, or did they go in knowing that things were going on?
No, at the time it was purely reno. It was just one of those sort of, this is be a weird one, and everyone's obsessed with home renovation shows, so it seemed like a sort of good, unique angle, and we filmed it just to release it for Ghost-tober, and that's when it came out.
And my understanding is your family is Halloween obsessed.
We are that family on the street that we go all out for Halloween, and maybe not entirely kid friendly. We had an escape from the asylum where the patients murdered the doctors when we were in Toronto, that got equal parts complaints and had all the local people from the hospital, the doctors, paramedics, cops coming up and asking to take pictures on the lawn with it. But yeah, it definitely caused a stir.
Was it a hard sell to the kids to say you're moving to this small town and you're buying a funeral home?
No, it really wasn't. And this is where people think our family is really odd, but we have literally upped and moved around the world on a whim, and our kids have always done it. We'd actually lived in Toronto far longer than anywhere they'd ever been in their life. So their view was, yeah, okay, it's kind of about time, and we've never done this before. Let's give it a go.
What's Dresden like?
Tiny, tiny agricultural town. There's about 2,000 people that live here. Median age is probably 70. We're not fully integrated, I think it would be fair to say. We turned up this younger family dressed in black, covered in tattoos, buying an old funeral home with a dog that's called Satan. And I think the poor neighbours were like, what? And then the next thing they know, they're invaded by this huge TV crew. And yeah, no, I think we made a splash.
Let's talk renovation. How does one take on, how many square footage?
14,000 square feet.
How does one take on that kind of undertaking? No pun intended. You'd never done that before, right?
So we'd renovated our own homes. I'd done a little bit of work for sort of family and neighbours and things, but of this magnitude, no, never. We were, honestly, we were completely naive. We walked in the door, we fell in love. We did not for 1 minute think through price per square foot for renovation. And it was a commercial building, although people had lived upstairs in the apartments. The ground floor, or sorry, North American first floor, nothing. We had to do everything from HVAC to plumbing to electrical, install kitchens, bathrooms, the whole thing. So I think that all translates to stupid.
Money pit, for sure.
Money pit. Beautiful money pit. We love it. I'm sitting in the library at the moment.
It's stunning.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely didn't think it all the way through.
When did things start to occur to you as far as there might be other people living in this house that we can't see?
Probably about 6 to 8 weeks into it. So I'm a terrible insomniac. So I was up one night at around 3 a.m. and I was painting, and a lady shouted hello. And I froze in my spot, and it had come from the parlor just next door. And honestly, I was terrified. There was no bravery here. I sat down on the couch. I had the dogs with me. Their hackles had gone up. They were growling at the door. And I just sat there until the light came up and everyone else started getting up. And I was like, okay, that's weird. I can't explain it, but okay. But then more and more things started to happen. And it was sort of gradual, but it escalated really quickly, if that makes sense. Like we heard more voices. You would hear music playing from the basement. There would be, footsteps walking around the house. Doors would slam. The weirdest one is this gentleman that was in the house. So we didn't even think anything of it. We had 12 people here from a TV crew filming. We had contractors and trades and deliveries. For the first year, 18 months that we lived in this house, we were never alone. And there was always, 20 people. So we used to see this gentleman, we call him the grey gentleman because he's got grey hair and he had grey trousers on and just a white shirt. He was just around. We'd see him walking through corridors, up the stairs, and we didn't even question it until production shut down and everything was done. And one day my husband saw him first and was like, what are you doing? And so I sort of went to see what's going on. And my husband's like, did you just see him? Where did he go? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, that guy that we never knew who he was working for. And we regularly see him. He wanders a set path through the parlor, up the stairs, into the main hallway, back down again. And you see him every 2-3 months.
And do you know who he is? Have you looked up history?
So we did research during the show, and we've had some investigators come in and look through the house as well. There's a book being written about the house available in August, I think.
A grave undertaking?
A grave undertaking, yes. There are so many candidates of who he could be. We don't know for sure. He doesn't look like any of the photos. We know he's not the original owners or any of the subsequent owners, but so much goes on in this house, and so much is seen and heard in this house. It's almost impossible to keep track. It's the craziest experience we've ever had. And I know I sound like a complete nutter as I'm talking about this, but
not at all. I believe in all of it, so you don't sound crazy to me.
It's really funny. So I'm with you. I always believed, and I had a few experiences in my life. Here, something happens every day, and it's got to the point where we're almost blasé about, our regulars, as we call them, like this gentleman, like some of the women that we hear talking, and some of the other things that happen. But my husband and my son were staunch, no, it's not a thing, you're crazy. And my husband now has had so many experiences. He's the first one out of the door now, like, yep, house is haunted. Here's the things that happen, Have
you cataloged how many people are there?
So we've tried. We've got to the point where we break it down into 3 categories. So we've got a core contingent of about 12 to 15 that seem to live here full time. And then we've got another sort of 15 or so that are regulars. And by regulars, we see them or hear them every month or two. And then there's what we call the passer-throughs, where you'll see someone or smell something or hear something, or you'll get a voice and you hear it once and it never repeats again.
Interesting. I always wonder if some of the spirits that we hear or feel or smell or sense, that they're on their own timeline because of whenever the particular thing happened at the time of their death.
Yep.
And so it matches with that date or specific hour.
Honestly, I'm open to any idea at this point, because when I came into the house, I believed in so much. Now I believe in a lot less, but what I believe in, I wouldn't profess to know the reasons for it or anything like that, but I strongly believe. And like the grey gentleman that we see all the time, what you're describing is exactly that. He walks his path. It's at certain times of the day. It is every 2 to 3 months. There's no eye contact. He doesn't even seem to be aware of us. And it's, that residual, I guess, is the term of what's going on. But then there are others. There's a lady that is one of our regulars. Her name is Paulie. She'll be featured in the book. She comes in every month, but she's not here full time, but she talks to us and answers and interacts, and it's nuts. It's completely nuts. It's, Noah, when we first moved into the house, kept having someone sit on her bed, and she would get woken up when the person sat on the bed and she could feel the pressure, and it freaked her out to begin with, but nothing happened, and she was freaked out but not scared. And so when we had the investigators here, we tried to get into that a lot more, and it turns out this is a lady, Paulie. She's from Dresden. Her family actually still reside in Dresden. Her husband had his funeral here, and she visited this place as it was sort of a beacon for the neighborhood. And when Noah moved in, Noah reminded her of her daughter, and she says that she really loves Noah. It'll be in the book, and we've got video of it. We were doing the second session with Paulie, and there's myself and Noah doing the session, and then there's 9 investigators. 8 of them are, truly big burly men, hardened to the paranormal world. And then Jill was also there, who's a sensitive. She's amazing. And this was the point where we were like, why do you keep coming and sitting on Noah's bed? What is it? And she just, she wrote out love, and all of us crying, sobbing. It was the most crazy but wonderful thing.
That's lovely. Please tell me someone keeps coming into that room, or am I just hearing a door open and shut out of nowhere?
So you're hearing 2 things. There's someone where I am in the library right now, beneath me is the old embalming room and storage. And there's someone wandering around down there and knocking things around. And then the other one was the door that creaked just then was my dog coming through. But you're probably...
Okay, good to know.
Nothing would surprise me. If you tell me you can see someone or hear someone, I'm like, yeah, sure.
I've got my eyes open, that's for sure. You said that there are things that you did believe in that now you don't believe in. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I guess a lot of it is the drama of it. When you watch the shows, when you read some of the books, it's always a demon or something with a desperate message or something trying to hurt you, and I was always, it was always big and dramatic and that sort of thing. What I have learned now is that there's people that haven't moved on, that are here for 101 reasons, and sometimes they just want to carry on living, and it's actually nice and almost comforting to have people around. And it's not big dramatic things all the time. A door opens and closes. Well, it's just someone coming and going. Someone wants to spend time in the house because they love my daughter because she reminds them of their daughter. It's those things that I don't think people talk about or acknowledge as much. I mean, we have had a couple of sort of uncomfortable things happen, but it's the less dramatic, scandalous, ghost hunter type things that I think I think I believe far more in now. And I also think far more happens around all of us every day than we have any clue about.
I would agree with that we're just not paying attention to or are not maybe aware. You're probably getting more tuned in all the time living there, as are, I think your children have the benefit of being young, so they haven't been given the bricks with which to wall themselves in, so they could still feel and hear things.
Yeah, my daughter Noah especially always has. And when we moved here, she was 12 and very open. And she still is very open. I mean, she has, from the day we moved in, she would get home from school and she would walk in the house and she'd walk up to her floor, which is a silly thing to say, you know, her floor. But she walks up to her floor and she starts chatting. She chats to anyone that might be there, that might want to chat to her. And, you know, she just, to your point, is open, and it is just, this is just what things are.
Do you ever feel like someone might watch you while you're having sex or going to the bathroom or taking a shower? Does any of that stuff occur to you?
I mean, it's funny, Aaron, my husband and I, Aaron and I have had that conversation, and friends and I have made the joke, and, you know, maybe. And if that's makes them happy, go for it. It was their house first, and I'm shameless.
I mean, I'm with you. If they want to watch, that's on them, not on me.
They're just going to be prepared for whatever they're going to see, but, you know.
You said there's been a couple of things, and obviously the woman shouting hello to you was scary because you weren't used to it yet. But have you felt any kind of warnings or for whom the bell tolls situations?
Yeah, there's only a few, and they're probably more shocking to us because we're so used to sort of such a nice, comforting environment. When it happens, it's like, whoa. But so the woman shouts randomly. She still shouts hello all the time. She's caught everybody that's been in this house. It's quite amusing. But the first night that we had the investigators here, Richard Estep and his team, after they left, and it'd been a long day, and we'd had some challenging things come up in some of the readings, they'd left, Aaron and I had just gone to bed, and the house started banging. It sounded like the foundations were cracking. Huge thud. Literally the floor shook. Kids woke up. The dogs were going nuts. We were just like, what the hell is happening? This house is silent. It doesn't even creak and settle. That was really unnerving. And about an hour after that happened, we were woken up by a howling. It sounded like a wounded animal, but it was coming from inside the house. So we had that on the first night, which we presume is people not happy with the investigation. We've had one day, there's two spots in the house that they're uncomfortable. They're not terrifying or anything like that, but you definitely don't feel welcome in them. I've got into the habit of doing video or doing voice recordings and things. And I'd just walked into the family room. Again, it was about 4 a.m. And I swore blind I heard someone whisper in my ear, basement. So I got my phone out, did the voice recording, and I was just like, what's in the basement? Didn't hear anything. Played it back when it was light outside because I am a coward. And there's a man's voice saying, I am. And it was not threatening. It was horrible. I just hated it. It just, when you go and your skin crawls and everything, that was really unsettling. And then sort of the other thing we have that we just honestly don't know what to do with is we have a mimic. And I honestly never believed in mimics. I heard stories. I know I'm an idiot. I heard stories and I thought it was people being silly or wishing that something was there. And it started off with my husband. My husband was getting a drink and my son supposedly walked past him. And so my husband was just like, oh, I'm making a vodka tonic. Do you want one? No answer. And so he went round the corner where my son had just gone to and he wasn't there. So he sent him a text message saying, where'd you go? And he was like, I'm in my room. I haven't been out of my room. What's going on? And then after that, it was my daughter and her friend having a sleepover, and they came downstairs about 11 o'clock at night to grab food, and they went through to the kitchen, but then they could hear me calling their names. And apparently I was in the room I'm in now, and they could hear it. God love my daughter was smart enough not to answer. And they just got what they want. As they were coming through to go back up to the stairs, to go upstairs, they could see somebody standing there calling their names, and both of them just ran for their lives. And then I've had an experience with the mimic where I was, again, insomnia. So I was down here in the library with the dogs, and I was watching TV. And my husband, he's got this great solution for insomnia. He looks at me and he says, just go to sleep. It's like, honey, you're a genius. I don't know why I didn't think of that. And it happens all the time. You can imagine how that gets. And so he walked into the library and he said, what are you doing? And I just turned around and I glared at him. He's like, why don't you just go to sleep? And I was like, yeah, great. And then I ignored him because I was angry. So he walked back off. And it was a few minutes later that I realized that I hadn't heard the stairs. You can hear when people come up and down. So I got up and went upstairs, and he was sound asleep in bed. And that, to now, that freaks me out that I could have a conversation and not understand that it wasn't my husband. That's bizarre.
To me, the mimics are probably the most terrifying.
Now I've experienced it and I understand. I agree. The fact that, if he had said, oh, look, I want to show you something in the basement, I would have gone. It wouldn't have dawned on me not to go. And when the mimic is calling my daughter's name and her friend's name, that makes me, as nothing has happened, again, it's not like anything awful has happened, but it does leave the sort of the idea in your mind of, whoa, why, where are we headed with this? If we acknowledge you, what does that open up? I don't know. I've got no answers.
And is that a recent occurrence?
Yeah. So it's been, we've sort of now we've realized, we've been kind of going back through all the different things that have happened and like, oh God, maybe that was the mimic. Maybe that was that. So it's been going on about a year, but it's in the last 4 months that it's ramping up. So it does make me very nervous. Richard, who did the investigation, who's become actually a really great friend, he and his team are being great. They're sort of on hand to help us if anything should happen, and they've offered to come back and cleanse the house and do things, but we'll see. It makes me very uncomfortable, but I'm also fascinated.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Do you feel that the other ghosts and or beings in the house would step in to protect you from that?
Yeah, we do actually. And that's something that's come up a lot in the investigations and the readings and everything that we do, is that, it's, again, not like the stories and the shows and everything. Nobody's trapped here. We've had no communication that anyone is bound to this house or here against their will. It's very much people want to be here. And there's half an idea in my mind that when we have had the sort of uncomfortable things happen, they've never happened again, with the exception of the mimic. And when we talk to the spirits, and a gentleman called Stephen, who's a sensitive and, well, actually he's a medium and an investigator, he's had conversations where people are very clear that they feel protective of us because we love the house so much and we've put it to a family home and it's coming back to life, pun intended, that basically they sort things out. They'll look after us.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I think people, whenever they come to the house, they have this idea, they look at the outside of it, which is kind of, it's grand but creepy. And it's, a funeral home and everything that comes alongside that. So they come in the door. Actually, Nick, you should ask Nick about this. But they come in the door and they're like, oh, I've never been anywhere so calm. It's lovely. It's, it is so welcoming. And I think that's a lot to do with the people that are still here. It just, you do feel welcome.
Yeah, your design aesthetic also helps a great deal, I think. It's quite lovely. The funny thing is I learned about you because of TikTok, and only after that did I find out that you were related to Nick.
Oh, really?
So I found you on TikTok first, and then when I was thinking, oh, I want to talk to these people, this is so fascinating, then I found the connection because I think he went and visited.
That's right.
Or they did pictures. I went, wait a minute, this is the family. Like, what? What are you talking about?
Right. It's funny how these things play out. Yeah, Nick and Ashley and the kids came and stayed with us for a week over Christmas and New Year.
Did their children experience anything out of the ordinary? Yeah. Kids are so open.
So open. And I'll let Nick tell the story. I don't know how much you would want to say, but I think it is fair to say that Nick walked in a skeptic and walked out very convinced. You should talk to Nick about it because, they had a wild time here with what they experienced. Yeah, Nick, literally ran into somebody more than once. They heard voices. They had kids running around. Ollie experienced so much. And he actually, what's crazy, he's 2.5 when they were here. And he was talking to Dee Dee and Ruth. And we went back and looked at baby names and children's names. And, oh, yeah, they were here. It's just...
Oh, so you have a list of the deceased that came through?
No, we have a list of all of the families that have lived here, and so all of the people. And then we have, anytime a name comes up, we have to go and investigate because this house saw thousands.
Right. Did anyone ever die in the house?
Yes. Oh my God. We're up to 23 that we've tracked so far, which is crazy. So yeah, it'll come out in the book, but one of the families that lived here, one of the sons turns out to have been mentally ill and he killed 2 of his sisters in the house. Earlier than that, there was a young woman, very young woman that was forced to get married and forced to have children. She had 11 children, of which she killed 5.
In the house?
In the house, all in the house. And then the other thing is that I didn't understand until we moved here is funerals and visitations are stressful. So people with underlying conditions, old people, it's not uncommon for them to just drop down dead. Literally, a funeral will be going on. Noah and I should have told the story. Noah and I were at the post office, and this woman came up to me and Noah and was just like, I have to tell you a story about your house. We were like, great. And they were like, my grandmother died in there at a funeral. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? It was literally, so they were attending a friend's funeral. Her mother was singing at the funeral, and as she was singing, her mother, so this woman's grandmother, literally dropped dead and fell out of her chair. She was taken upstairs. Priest came, the doctors came, declared dead. She was taken downstairs, embalmed, and 3 days later there was a service here for her. So, and there was another one, this guy, he didn't know who I was, and I was in a store, and he came in and he was talking to someone else, and they were gossiping about the new people that had bought the funeral home. And he was like, I wonder if anyone's told them that guy hung himself in one of the bedrooms. I was like, I'm sorry, what's this? And yeah, at the sort of, I think 20s, 30s, someone hung himself in one of the rooms. So the longer you're here, the more people come and talk to you and tell you, and then there's more it's endless.
Wow. That is wacky and unsurprising. Just as you were talking about the various things, especially with children, I'm glad, as horrible as it is for kids to be murdered, obviously, or to die young, either way, at least there are other kids there as well to play with. If they are going to be stuck in the house, or not stuck, you know what I mean? If you say they're there by choice, but if they're going to stay, at least they have playmates.
This is the thing, and it's funny. So when Nick and the kids were here, because they've got young children, we occasionally hear the kids, very occasionally, not that much. While Nick and Ashley were here, it was every day, running around, laughing, sometimes crying. We've got an EVP of one of the children saying "mummy." It just, yeah.
Because the other kids, the live kids, were in the house. It probably got them all excited and wanting to play.
Yeah, because they wouldn't have seen them. There weren't any children living in this house since the 40s. Yeah. So, this must have been incredible to suddenly have live playmates, new playmates, whatever you want to.
That look like them. I mean, representation matters.
It does. It does.
Even in the spirit world, I'm sure. Yeah. Oh, so interesting. Your TikTok is great. For those listening, talk a little bit about that and your decision to make that. And are you surprised by how it blew up? I mean, everyone's obsessed a little bit with hauntings and things around supernatural. I think that goes without saying, but yours in particular got very popular.
I honestly was surprised. And yeah, I've been terrible the last couple of months. I need to get back to posting again. I'm rubbish.
Takes a lot of work.
I had no idea when we did the TV show. We had to do social media, so I had to learn it. It was a hard lesson, and I now feel really mean about all the things that I said about influencers over the years. And easy money. No, it's not. It's hard work. But
it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job for sure.
That's very much what I learned. And yeah, anyway, no, it was really surprising. It's doing the show and then keeping up with social media afterwards. We really thought that when the show came out, there would be either we thought people were nuts for making this, that Discovery Plus was out of their minds. Nobody was ever going to watch a show about our family. We thought it was stupid. And then not only did people watch it, but it had such a huge reaction, and we've found other people like us, that have their family life, have the experiences, that really embrace it, that are happy to fly the freak flag and be weirdos. And we are, all four of us are, we know that. And it's been far more rewarding than we ever thought. And then when I got in the habit and started posting on TikTok, the response to that, so many people being fascinated by the paranormal and by the renovations we're doing in the house, because it's not your typical white everything or beachy something. It's got a lot of personality. Yeah, it's been lovely. I've got to be honest.
You talked about in one of the videos I watched, I think it's an upstairs room that has an unwelcoming feeling. I'm assuming the basement also feels unwelcoming. What was it about that room that made your hackles rise?
So that's a room. Yes, it's sort of off one of the wings, and it's above the garages now. And we call it the overflow room. So when they were embalming, or if they had too many caskets or too many services, it would get overflowed up to this room. And it's literally, you go into the corridor and stand at the bottom of the stairs, and even if the light's on, the room is dark, and it feels like pressure coming at you, like you are just not welcome. It's like, do not come. And so when you do go up there and you get in there, like your ears pop, you feel a weight on your chest, you are very, very watched, and it feels borderline aggressive. And again, we had someone come through who's also an investigator, Danielle, and she called it a lurker, someone that is just lurking and watching and unhealthy, not violent, but just creates that nasty atmosphere. And so I'll turn all the lights on, but I make the dogs go up there with me. It's the last room. I've got 2 rooms left to renovate. It's going to be the last one. I'm really not looking forward to it.
Can you clear the space? Or do you feel like that's crossing a line, kicking someone out?
That's exactly how I feel, because lots of people have come in and said, oh, you could do cleanses and do saging and everything. I'm not going to do that. We're just the most recent caretakers of the space. There's people that have lived here for decades, centuries, in fact. It was their home first. I'm not going to do anything that makes them feel unwelcome, even if they make me feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. I have all sorts of interesting stories myself, but I was once called to a house where there was drawers being opened, plants being knocked off, lit candles being knocked off of counters, this sort of thing, what felt like a true haunting. And what it turned out to be was a woman and her son. She knew they were passed on, or that they were not in corpus, The child did not, and she was adamant she did not want the child to know. And the child was acting out because there were these people in his house, and it was sort of an intention thing and also a bratty thing.
Yeah.
And it got him attention, and so he kept doing it. We ended up in a nice little agreement. They left candy for him in the cupboards, and in exchange for him not behaving that way. What was really fascinating is that he was obsessed with the red, he said the red, what did he say? The red, he didn't say vehicle, but he called it something because from whenever they died, there wasn't such a thing as like a pickup truck. He called it something specific, the red something. And it turned out that the boyfriend of one of the women that lived in the house had this shiny red, brand new GMC truck that he loved and he was obsessed with. And so we worked out sort of a negotiation that he was allowed to, be part of, play with the truck and things like that, as long as it didn't hurt anything or anybody. Yeah. But it was wild to have these negotiations with energy that very much is aware of itself.
That's it. See, that's exactly it. That's what happens here. And it is completely wild because I don't even know how to put the thoughts together, the words together. Just, you can have a conversation, you can have a negotiation, you can see the results of it with a spirit, a ghost. I call them energy because I don't know what the right thing is. It's wild, completely wild.
It's so wild. It's so wild. I believe in it 100%. And the thing that's so interesting, and you've probably come across this, and especially because the internet creates trolls, but the idea that you don't have to convince anyone because you've experienced it. Just like I feel like I have no need to convince anyone of anything I've experienced. It's my experience, and it doesn't matter to me whether you believe me or not because I know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to scream and yell because it doesn't matter. Do you find that you have gotten more grounded that way?
Yeah, really, really have. When we first moved in and things started to happen, especially the show wanted to bring it up, we pushed back a lot on some of the things that we would talk about on the show because we didn't want it to be that jump scare sensational thing, because that's not a true representation of what was happening here. And so when we first started experiencing and talking about it, my husband especially had, and that's the dogs and okay, I'm about to get jumped on by a dog. Down.
Hi, Satan.
That's Satan who's just come in. I felt like I always had to defend my position on it and justify it and all of these things. And at this point, I don't. This is what happens. It's what I believe. It's what I experience. We've had 20 people through here who've done investigations. We have EVPs, we have videos, we have pictures. We have, just the evidence is absolutely crazy. But it's up to you what you believe. It's, and if you want to be rude about it, you go ahead and make yourself feel great about it, but it doesn't bother me any.
Yeah. And even to go as far as the person that's in the spare overflow room, as you described it, it may be that they're just concerned that you want to get rid of them. And so they're fighting. There's sort of an offense is the best defense scenario.
Yeah, it could well be.
The basement one's a little creepier, and the mimic thing, pretty creepy.
Yeah, the basement is, although I've not had that voice, I've not had anything there since. There is a spot in the very old basement. There's only one spot that gives you that sense. Yeah, we've not seen it's permanent above the garages, the room up there. It's day or night. They're there all the time, and we try, and we're very vocal that everybody is welcome to stay. When people come in the house and suggest cleansings and various things, we shut it down immediately, and we are very clear that that's never going to happen unless somebody does something to hurt one of us. That's a very different scenario, but yeah, everybody is welcome here.
Can't wait to watch this back and see if anything flitters by, because I'll tell you, when we started this and we were talking, everything in the background of my computer went completely black and then came back on again, and that's never happened. So I was like, ooh, maybe we'll get something good.
You might. I watch it. You would. We constantly had problems when we were shooting here. All the screens going out, batteries, like the 8-hour batteries would last 20 minutes. You name it. Or yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I died twice when I was younger, and so my veil is quite thin. That's why another reason I'm like, oh, I wonder.
Oh yeah,
because I swear they recognize that in you, and for some reason, and so they're more willing to talk. It's almost like a social worker or something. They're like, oh, you get what I'm going through. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I think you are spot on, because what I've noticed, like when people come to the house, as I say, usually it's fairly quiet, and until sort of day 2, where they've figured out who's going to be receptive, who's going to talk. But like I've had a few people, one of my friends, Vicky, she is very much like you, very thin veil, very sensitive, see, hear, all of it. And from the second she walked in, they're making themselves known, like literally greeting her at the door. It's crazy. So I think you'd have a time here. But again, it's nice. I mean, it's not threatening. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is it's all about boundaries. If you don't scare me, I won't scare you. Is that a deal?
And there's been a couple of times where I have been scared, and I've been like, guys, this is not cool. Don't do that. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And again, probably sound completely crazy, but
no, I believe it. And I've often told people that it's all about boundaries. The universe works with some particular laws, and those laws are boundaries. Now, there are those that cross the line, just like there are in life.
Yeah.
There's going to be those that cross the line in non-life. I don't even like to call it death, because I don't even know what it is, but because they seem very much alive. They're just different, Well,
this is why it's, when Richard and I first met, his first question to me was, what do you believe? And I struggled to answer that, because ghosts, spirits, entities, none of those are right. It is energy that takes forms, and the form might be sound or sight or smell. So if it's energy, they're not dead, but they don't have, a corporeal body. I don't know. I just don't know.
Is the plan? I read that you're considering selling the house, or you're moving. Is that correct?
Halfway, yes. So my husband's job needs us to be on the other side of Ontario for a while. We've got the house on Airbnb, so you can rent it.
Oh
yeah, it's a little more popular than I first anticipated.
Yeah, you think?
I was like, the show was a year ago. Everyone's over it. No one will know us, and it's doing quite well. And I'm really excited for people to experience this place. We love it so much. I can't wait for other people to experience it. It is on the market to sell, because we don't know what we're going to do, and there's a bit of a friendly competition between Aaron and I. I'm like, well, if I can rent it, and while we're away, so it pays for itself, then we don't need to sell it, do we? So that is my thoughts. So I'm just hoping the rentals keep going, because I love this place. It would absolutely devastate me.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Are you concerned at all? And I'm, again, thinking of trolls and things. Are you concerned at all of anyone coming to stay there that is going to try and get rid of people that live in there just for kicks?
I am. So there's a couple of things to it. There's that side where they're going to try and move people on, because it happens. The only thing I would say on that is most of these people, because no one's trapped here, because everyone is here by choice, because the people coming in are usually novices that have read how to do things on the internet, they're probably not going to be very successful. They're going to annoy the hell out of me. They're going to annoy the hell out of the people that are here, but they probably can't do much damage. That's what I'm telling myself. And then there's the flip side of it, of just working out enough protection and how I understand if people are coming here and inviting anything else in, because we are very cautious about how we communicate and how we protect ourselves and the house.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to bring some sigil situations into it or something. I'm not sure, but there's got to be.
Yeah. Again, the team that worked with Richard on the investigation, a couple of them have become very, very dear friends. And so they've been offering help and guidance on how we can do that. So
Good. Yeah, got to protect them too. It was just a crazy thought, but it's a reality for you.
it is a reality. I know it's a crazy thought and it's crazy altogether, but it is a reality. And honestly, I hadn't really thought about it until Jill, who I mentioned before, was talking about some of the investigations she's been on where people that have gone on them with her have suddenly started trying to cleanse and release spirits and move them on. And she's like, yeah, no, this is not a thing we do.
Yeah, it's sort of Horton Hears a Who and Beetlejuice combined as a cautionary tale.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly it.
Well, tell people how they might find you on the socials, all your TikTok, all that stuff, and to be able to learn more about what you've done and watch your renovations and such.
Okay, so we have the show We Bought a Funeral Home, and that streams on Discovery Plus, HBO Max, and Prime. And then for both Instagram and TikTok, we are the Blumbergs. And you can find us posting all sorts of weird things there. We are terrible at social media, so you get the true story of us. And then the house is on Airbnb, and you can rent it. I think it's under 620 Cross Street is the title. So Dresden, Ontario, you will find it quite quickly. There's a lot of it out there.
Have you had any people showing up on the door, Bob Dylan fan style, that are uninvited?
Yeah.
Have you had that scenario?
Yes, we have. We have had people knocking on the door asking to come and drink in the speakeasy. We've had people come to the house and demand to be shown around because we put it on TV. And so they have a right to come in and see things. We have people that take pictures through the windows and then they send them to me on social media to say, look at the picture I got. That's a really weird one.
That's worse than a mimic.
It is. I mean, that's like 1% of the people that do weird or uncomfortable things. I mean, it has been an overwhelmingly positive experience so far.
Yeah. When do you officially move out? And I'm assuming the Airbnb things happen in sections. You're there part-time and away part-time?
No, so we officially launched the Airbnb in July. Our first guests come on July 5th. And so we will have a new place, as I say, sort of the other side of Ontario called Ottawa. And so we'll be there while we're doing the Airbnb. And just because the house is so big, we've decided that we'll only rent the whole house. So you can't do by room or anything like that. Then we'd have to have a property manager in here managing it, and it'd be more of a traditional B&B, which we're not ready for.
Yeah. Although what a cool job that would be, to be the on-site caretaker.
I tried talking my son into it, but he was having none of it. So.
Why? Did he just didn't want to be tied to the house like that?
Yeah, well, he's 22. He's looking forward to getting back to a city and, finding a bar and a social life.
I get that. Ontario is quite large. For those who don't know, Ontario is, it's huge. So it's not like you can get up in the morning and say, oh, I'm just going to nip over and check out the house. It requires time and effort.
It does. So Ontario, to drive across Ontario takes just over 24 hours, to give you an idea of how big we call it a province, you'd call it a state, but it is massive. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we first moved here, I had no idea. And you suddenly realize, much like crossing America, you go into so many different time zones and
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's delightful speaking with you. I would love to come see the house. I too am so curious. And also it's just stunning. It's a stunning home. You've done an incredible job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And you should, when you can get here, come. We'll make sure there's no guests here and come and stay here. You'll have, the first night is always quiet. It's like they're sort of sussing you out and seeing, if you're going to be receptive and all the rest of it. And then it's literally fun and games. It really is. It's a special place.
Have you set out a chess set to play chess with anyone?
Yes. Yeah, we have I know. We have chess and we have what are the checkers out.
And do they play with you?
They move. They do move. Yep. And we have put bells in every room because I found by accident that I think it's probably the kids. They like ringing the bells to let you know what room they're in. And yeah.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. It's so freaking
It really is.
It's so cool. What a great life you have.
It has been completely wild and unexpected, and it's been magical. And the fact that we've got to do it as a family, we'll have this forever. When Aaron and I are gone and the kids have got their kids, they'll be able to show them what we did and this life we had. I mean, how cool is that?
Well, and if you decide not to sell it, it may just keep passing down through the generations. And then maybe you and Aaron will get to haunt it, and then it'll just keep going.
Yeah, I think we'd be far more mischievous than a lot of the people we've got here, but I love that idea.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. Thank you again for inviting me on. I really am an open book on this. And if you have follow-up questions or get asked anything, just let me know. I'm happy.
I mean, I want to get on a plane, honestly. Like right now. Come visit.
Yes.
Have a lovely afternoon.
Okay, you too. And thank you.
All right. Absolutely. And thank you for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.